house, and if any Indian tries to stop me, I'll blast him.
You know, the only thing more pathetic than Indians on TV is Indians watching Indians on TV.
Hey everybody, it's Ian, back again for another episode of Native Film Talk. I hope everyone's doing well. Today's episode's going to be different. It's not going to be a movie, it's a reflection episode. I've wanted to do a reflection episode for a bit, and I wasn't sure if it was after 10, after a month or whatever, and just talk a little bit about my process so far, what I think, where I think this is going to go as a show. And I put a feeler out there on Instagram. I'm just like, what do you guys think about a reflection episode? And I got a lot of positive feedback. Nobody said no. So if you didn't want this episode, I apologize. You didn't respond to the poll, and I didn't know that you didn't want this. But the majority, well, everyone that responded said, yeah, sounds good. Because I said I was going to talk about how I choose a podcast, how I prepare for the episodes, how my process for reviewing, but also talk about Thanksgiving. I don't know how much of Thanksgiving I'll talk about. I'll save that. I'll try to save that for the end. No, let's just talk about it. I'll talk about it, but I'll say so far it's been a lot of fun. It's been more fun than I've had. I'm gonna be honest. It's the first thing I think about when I think about work. Like, I think about doing this podcast first and foremost before anything. I just have a lot of fun doing it. And I think that is the main reason why I want to keep doing it, and why I initially wanted to. I'm like, man, that sounds like fun to just review native, like movies with native representation in it. That sounds like fun. And so far, 11 episodes in, it has been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I hope that enthusiasm comes off on the microphone and in my work. And an episode a week, I was, I think, a little ambitious. So part of the reflection episode is for me to talk about really my personal life and like other stuff going on. So I have a full-time job. I work from home since March, since COVID kind of shut everything down. I have the luxury of being able to, one, keep my job, but also work 100% remotely from home. So I have a home office that's also the studio, and I've been doing that since the start of really March, and it's been a grind to have to, figure out the work-life balance. And I started the podcast 2 months ago, and I fit that in, and I'm also a student. So I'm a second-year MBA student, Master's in Business Administration at Arizona State. So I was doing it in person. So like twice a week, I take 4-hour classes, and I go on campus. But since COVID shut everything down, we've been 100% online. We just kind of call in at the same time as class would start. And so there are some really long days. Like, I'll work from 8 to 5 and then get a little bit of a break, then go to class from 6 to 10. And then afterwards, I'll try to stay up late till like midnight or 1, watch a movie, and maybe, some YouTube interviews, some interviews from like the red carpet, and then just bang it out, go from there, and try to really just read too online. Try to go back and read some of the peer-reviewed articles I had from college, or some books that my brother recommend, who is a film major, by the way. That's kind of my like technical advisor. But yeah, so I graduate in May, so I can't wait for that to be over so I can have more time for the podcast, more time for my family. I've talked about it a few times, but I'm married, and I have a 1.5-year-old son, and we have one child, and he keeps us busy. And I think my favorite part about this whole experience of quarantine and working from home is just seeing my son every day. And when I say, like, at the end of the episodes, will I show this to my son? I get real excited about that possibility to be able to show these movies to my son, or avoid showing them to him, or really just the future of what native film is going to look like for him. And it's pretty exciting. But back to like the 1 episode a week, it was pretty ambitious at the beginning. Well, it's ambitious now. When I first started, I'm like, 1 episode a week? Yeah, I can do that. That's no problem. Because I was reviewing Parasite and Pocahontas and Last of the Mohicans, movies that I was already watching, movies that I was familiar with. And so I'm like, yeah, 100%, I'll knock that out of the park. I'll knock those 3 out this week. And that's exactly what I did. For the launch of the podcast, I did 3 episodes, and I pushed those 3 episodes out. And I'm like, oh, this is easy. Wind River, boom, done. Last of the Mohicans, done. And then I just like populated the list, and I'm like, this is going to be easy. This is going to be, and then life happens, things slow down. So I got like a 2-week buffer at one point where I had them scheduled for release, and then I just like started not falling behind, but just like being week to week. And so the process is, let's kind of talk about that a little bit. The process is I choose the movie based on its availability. Like, in theory, every movie is available. But there are some movies that are just deep, deep cuts that I want to do. I want to pick my spots on when I do those. Like Windwalker, Outlaw Josie Wells. It's not a deep cut, but it's older, and Little Big Man. I think movies like that, Clear Cut with Graham Greene, these are some wonderful movies that I would like to review at some point. Some decent movies, I should say. Little Big Man, I'm talking about you. But I think I would like to do these, but it's like, how available is this? So up to this point, I've tried to choose movies that are on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, or it's very like easy and accessible that you can get on video on demand. Like or they're movies that just people have seen, like Last of the Mohicans. Parasite is on Hulu now. Indian in the Cupboard. That's why I chose that one, because that just got added in November. And so I'm like, well, there's a good opportunity for people to see these. I really don't want to choose. I'm trying to not choose movies that everyone doesn't have like access to, unless they have like one of the major. Because I feel like a lot of people have Netflix, Hulu, especially if you're listening to this podcast. You're like listening to a film review podcast. I feel like you're going to have a subscription to like the big three and Disney Plus. So that's kind of my process. For choosing them. I initially, when I was kicking around the idea of doing this podcast, like in mid-October, early October, actually September, I remember one night I was sitting there just watching a movie. I think I was watching Parasite, honestly, and it just came across. I'm like, what if I did that? And I'm like, maybe I do one on Last of the Mohicans. What about Smoke Signals? And then Dances with Wolves, Thunderheart. Well, you could also do Back to the Future 3 and Fargo. And then there's Basketball or Nothing. And then there's Chiefs, the documentary. And then you could also do, and then I just kept going down this train. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Like, these names are just flying through my head. And like 30 minutes later, I had like 50 movies. And I'm like, holy shit, I could do this. I could really do this. And then as time went on and I kicked around the idea, and I was texting like my brothers and my friends of like, what's a native movie you can think of? And this was all just like texting people I knew. And then the list slowly grew to like, 60, 70. And then I started the show. And then I started the podcast. And I've gotten an overwhelming response from people like proposing movies of like, hey, you should do this or you should do this. And I really appreciate that, because now the freaking list is at 140, roughly, and 140 movies. If I stick to my one movie a week, or one show, or one piece a week, I'm on track to be doing the show for 2.5 years, roughly, almost 3 years. So if I don't figure out where I want to take this show within the next 3 years, then I got problems. I'm going to tell you where I hope to take it in a little bit, but. Yeah, so I got plenty of content right now, and I'm sure as we continue to make more movies with native representation, I'm just going to continue to have much more content. Like when I say I got 3 years of content, I don't look at it as like, oh man, that's so much. And I look at that, I'm like, man, I could potentially be doing this for 3 years. That's crazy. Unless like something bigger, better, something else comes along. Like, I don't see myself ever stopping unless I morph this into something else. Like, it's going to be Native Film Talk. Whatever it is, it's going to be another version. It's going to be an evolution of Native Film Talk, but I see myself continuing to do this. So if you suggested a movie or a TV show, I will get to it eventually. I don't know when, but I promise you I will get to it eventually. So please keep suggesting. I have like a spreadsheet. So I'm like a spreadsheet guy. My regular day job, I'm a supply chain guy right now. So working like managing inventory for a company, helping manage like a cog in a piece that manages inventory. So spreadsheets is like kind of my life, and I just naturally put all my everything into a spreadsheet. I have it filtered by like episodes, types of representation that I haven't. So I said like indirect representation. So that's like movies that I guess are not about natives but have natives in it, have native representation in it, like Twilight, Addams Family Values, Avatar, all the way down to like Rambo, Fargo, Blazing Saddles, Snow Dogs, the Cuba Gooding Jr. movie, Green Mile, Suicide Squad, Joe Dirt 1 and 2. Shout out to Kick and Wing, right? X-Men Origins, Avatar The Last Airbender, Atlantis, Milo's Return, Westworld, and then I should add Longmire right now because that was a recommendation from a listener, so thank you. And then obviously the direct representation where the movie is blatantly about native representation. And so those movies are like Flags of Our Fathers, Dead Man, Little Big Man, Dances with Wolves, Last of the Mohicans, that kind of stuff. And then kind of just this unknown category. Well, then I have one called Native Owned, where like we're behind the camera, we own the story, and we're telling our own story. So Skins, Trudell, Smoke Signals, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, Indian Horse, Fast Runner, Edge of America, Powwow Highway, Business of Fancy Dancing, Running Brave, The Billy Mills Story, Dance Me Outside, Our Kids Don't Speak English, Molly from Denali, Basketball or Nothing, Real Engine, Chiefs Off the Res. And I've gotten a few questions too about from individuals about, what are you only doing North American indigenous films? And at this time, the only other indigenous films I'm doing or that I have on my list are like New Zealand stories, like Maori stories. So like Once Were Warriors, Well Rider, and Boy, the Taika Waititi movie. I might like pepper in Roma. You know, I just don't know enough about those movies. I just don't know enough about what those movies are. I'm sure, like, I'm not scared of research. I'm not scared to look things up. If you have those recommendations, let me know. Like, I'll look into it for sure. I'm just, at this time, I don't have plans to do that. And I have plenty of content. It's not like I'm searching for content. Like I just mentioned, I have potentially 3 years worth of episodes, so I'm not in a hurry to add more to the list. But if something comes out that's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll put it on the list. I'll supersede it. If something comes out in theaters that's like, oh God, you know, like Trickster, the TV show is supposed to be coming out. Like if that comes out and becomes a hit, you know, like The Liberator just dropped on Netflix. Martin Sensmeyer's in it. Tatanka Means, Kiowa Gordon, Forrest Goodluck. Like that's probably I'll probably do that before the end of the year, sometime in December, just because it has a lot of traction. It's on Netflix. People can see it. And that leads me into the next transition of, I don't know how I'm going to do this. The TV show part. It makes sense to me, like movie-wise, to do that because I just watch a movie and I have a process for movies, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But like a TV show, it's so hard. Like Fargo season 2 is, I mean, Fargo is like every season is different. It's a different story. It's a different setting. But Fargo season 2 is where it has Hanzi and it has the native representation in it. But that's like 10, 11 episodes. Like that's a whole week. You know, how do I still keep up with the week in episode kind of deal while doing a TV show, especially if it's something like Westworld where it's like throughout, or Hell on Wheels, Longmire, Yellowstone. I really don't know how I get like a good feel for representation, especially if the native character evolves throughout the TV show and they just start out being like like they're not maybe a mainstay in the show until later on. But I don't know that unless I watch it, so I'm still trying to figure that one out. I want to include TV shows in here because, like Basketball or Nothing, it's a mini series, but it's still it's a one season TV show if you want to look at it that way. Same with Molly from Denali. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to review those. So yeah, that's kind of how I've been choosing them and where I hope to do with movies. And as far as like the process for how I do these, so it's pretty simple. Simple for me anyway. One, I just do a rough watch through. If I haven't seen it or not, like I don't try to rely on memory. Like I go and watch it. I'll go and rent it, whatever I need to do. And then I'll just watch the movie, and I'll try my best to just watch it once through, and I'll stop unless there's a significant point where like I want to quote it during the show, then maybe I'll like play that like three or four times over so I can like get the dialogue exact. Or I'll look online and try to, maybe it's like a significant part in the movie and they have it already in quotes on like IMDb, or sometimes I'll look up the movie script. There are some websites that publish the script from the movie, and I'll just like take out chunks from the script so I don't have to go and do that work of like rewatching it to like get the captions on, or to get the basically to transcribe the script. So I'll do that, and then I'll take notes on my phone. I try to not use my laptop until like my second or third time watching it, but I'll just take like real quick notes on my phone while I'm watching it, and I'll just have observations. So an example from one of my recent episodes, like Indian in the Cupboard, I'll just say it's a book from 1980. Like if I looked that up online, I'll just put that, and it got removed from reading lists for good reason. I'll just put like Toys Coming Alive was a big market in this area. Demonic Toys, Child's Play, Small Soldier, Indian in the Cupboard, blah, 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 blah. And so I'll write stuff like that to just like jog my memory. And I'll put like nobody corrects any of the bullshit from Boone. I'll put that in there. And then I'll email that to myself, and then later on I'll build those out into the show notes. And this is my process. This is what works for me right now. This is how I feel comfortable. I'm not saying this is the way it should be done. I'm positive 10, 20 episodes from now, it'll look different. But in my office, where my studio office is right now, I have a really big whiteboard, like a regular size whiteboard. When COVID hit, I needed a whiteboard once this became my office, I just needed it to keep my thoughts in order with school, my day, like for my family too. Like they have a section where they write their stuff down, just so I can keep everything organized. And so this is obviously pre-podcast, and so I tried to use the whiteboard to write my notes down. So like my first 2-3 episodes, there might have been times where I sat there in just silence, and I would like take that out and post. I would sit here for like 20-30 seconds and it'd just be silence, and I'd just be thinking, and I have to like trim that out and like post. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I didn't have notes. I was trying to like remember, like read my notes and process it at the same time. So I ended up just like getting pretty exhaustive with my notes and just thinking like, Ian, if this was a presentation at work, or if this was a presentation for school and you would like have notes for it, like how would you do it? To get all of your information, to whittle it down, to have everything you need in front of you. So in case you need to jog your memory, you can, but really just use it there as like a reference point. So that's what the show notes are. But I put a lot of effort into these things. My show notes, no joke, they average like 4,000 to 5,000 words. But that's just, this copy pasting from the internet. That's me just like writing during the show or during the movie I watch, like my second or third watch through. And I'm not watching the entire thing. I'll watch it once diligently. The second and third time, it's like I'm skipping huge parts. And the plot review, like that's really where the majority of the content for the show notes goes to. I try to do a good plot review because when I didn't do a plot review, I felt like I was jumping around too much. I would like to review in plot the native representation, especially if it's a movie like Parasite, where it's like a very specific part in the movie. Or if they call back to an earlier part in the movie, I would have liked to already explain that in detail instead of saying, well, in 2 parts of the film they did this. And it's kind of hard for, especially like, I would like for people to watch the movies prior to listening to my episode, but you don't necessarily have to. Like if you haven't seen a movie in a long time, that's where like the benefit of my show is. I feel like I review the plot thorough enough that you can be like, okay, I remember that now. And maybe it encourages you to go watch it again afterwards. So that's kind of been my process. And I have those show notes available during my show, or during like kind of in the back while I'm recording the episode, and I just reference it and I scroll through, and it's all in chronological order how I want it to. And there are times when like I don't look at my notes for 10-15 minutes and I have to like scroll down like 2-3 pages just because I got through all of that. But That's helped me. I've instituted this since like episode 4, and I feel like it's helped tremendously. Well, 5, I should say. And it's helped me tremendously with my confidence in my content and just making sure I'm not missing any key points that I want to convey during an episode. So that's been my process. And I think that an episode a week was ambitious, but I'm not backing down from it because I have the time. It's not like now that I do the podcast and I'm in school and I have my job and I'm a dad and I'm a husband, and that's not in order of importance. I always tell that to my wife. I should really flip that around. I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I have my work, I have school, and I have my podcast. That's really where it is in order of importance. And somehow I have time for all that. Like it blows my mind. I really don't know. Before, like 2 years ago, before I started my MBA, before I had my son, before I had this podcast, I don't know what I was doing with my time. Like I get so mad at myself to think like, what was I doing with my days? I have no idea. Like, I mean, obviously watching movies because I love movies and playing video games, and just I really don't know where my days would go because now it's all structured. Like I come home and I am home, I log off and just peck away at things throughout the day, whether it's school, studying. I'm taking global econ right now, so it's just like, it's a freaking bore. But I'll like print out my case studies I have to read, and I have an entrepreneurship class I'm taking, and sort of like look at those case studies and get that done. And it's a lot, but you know what? I haven't, the MBA and this podcast, I have a lot of fun doing that, and I have a lot of passion around that, and I don't view them as burdens. And then I have my son and my wife, and obviously they're not burdens. You just make time for it. If it's important to you, you make time. And I think that's the most exciting thing about this is I've realized like the idea of like a 60-hour work week sounds awful. But that's because it's envisioning me doing my regular job for 60 hours. And I like my job, but I don't love it, And I think that's where like I look forward to doing the extra 20 hours or 10 hours a week for a show, for the podcast and social media, and responding to emails and responding to instant messages and engaging on social media with people who listen to the show, people who are enthusiastic about Native representation in film. They're enthusiastic about what I'm putting out there, and it's fun. It's freaking fun. Like I get excited. I got an email the other day from someone who told me they binged my entire show in a week. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, and not in a bad way. I was just like, are you kidding me? That's so freaking cool. And to hear people tell me like, you do a great job, or like just to hear the engagement from people who listen and to see where people are listening. So my host, so like how podcasts work, if you don't know, and if you at some point are interested in doing it, there's a way you can do it where you use places like Libsyn to host, meaning you upload your episodes to this host, Libsyn, and this is just what I use. Libsyn, you pay a subscription service, like a per month basis, to like basically you're paying for cloud space. So that way, like per month, you have like X amount of storage for cloud space, and then you upload up to that limit, of course. And if you need more, you pay for more. And they help you create an RSS feed. And all that means is you can have your podcast go to YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, wherever you want it to go. And you sign up and register, and then you just give them your RSS feed. So that way it constantly sends what you have published on Libsyn, and boom, goes out there. So within Libsyn and within any podcast hosting service, they give you analytics, like stats, tell you how many total downloads you have, like by day, per week, per month. And they also, in mine, I have advanced analytics based on my subscription level, and they tell you where your downloads are coming from. No joke. I have a download from 45 of the 50 United States. That blew my mind. And it's not Alaska or Hawaii. Those are covered. It's like Alabama, Arkansas. Like I don't have downloads from there. South Dakota, Montana, but everywhere else it's like crazy. I like have tons of downloads from Virginia. I have no idea how that happened. California and Arizona are the most like places I have downloads, and that's in Washington. It blows my mind. I'm just like, geez, this is awesome. And in Canada, 8 out of the 10 provinces we have them covered. Newfoundland and New Brunswick, where you at? We don't have any from the territories. And I have like a consistent stream of downloads from England, from the United Kingdom, from east of England and Yorkshire and the Humber. Never heard of those places prior to doing this podcast, but I'm getting a steady stream of downloads from that area. And then like random places like Chile, India, Russia, Sweden. You just like see like this like data visualization global map, and it shows you where you're getting like impressions, where you're getting downloads. And that's pretty cool to see that you have like that big of a reach from just like people sharing on Instagram, people sharing on Twitter, people like word of mouth, and then just other people who go and randomly search for that in their country or in their state. They're just like native film, or they come across like, I want to look up Pocahontas on podcasts or whatever movie it is, and then mine comes up and they're like, oh, I'll give this a try. And then some people like it enough that they come back. And I think that's the coolest thing is I when I started this podcast, I just thought like, oh yeah, we'll have a steady, like I had a number in mind, like a steady stream of listeners, but I never thought about where they'd be from. And I think that's been the coolest thing is seeing on social media the type of people that we're engaging with. Like we have like directors, producers, actors, like film critics, people are in the film industry, like following and well, I don't know if they're listening, but at least like following Instagram and like liking my content I put out there. I say we because it's me and my wife. My wife has been a tremendous help putting the website together, helping manage my social media, just educating me on how all of that works. And it's really like a family podcast where she's not doing the work of like making the episode happen, of like watching a movie, making the podcast, but she's certainly helping on the engagement side, like helping me put together my website, my thumbnail art. It's like, it's great. It's wonderful. I have the best wife. She's awesome. Love you. And I think that, man, it's just been so much fun so far. And I wanted to share some goals with you guys. So I have on my board I was telling you all about earlier, my goal, I have 3 goals written down that I stare at every single time I do this podcast. And that was just coincidental. I didn't put them in view. I just stare at them because that's the way I have this room oriented. But it's like have a native actor, director as a film guest, like somebody in the industry. And then so just so we're clear, I use actor in the gender neutral sense. I don't like the word actress. That's just me personally, Ian. So throughout my entire show, I'm going to say actor. If I say actress in there, I'm like, what did I just say? The only time I'll ever say actress is probably like when I refer to an award show, because that's how they give out awards. But I use actor because that's an occupation. You have a doctor, not a doctress. That's how I view it, me personally. So that's one goal, is to have a native actor, director on the show, interview. And then I think when I have them on, I just want to ask them, what they're working on. What is it like on the front lines? This is my perception as an audience member, as a viewer, as a fan, someone who's just really interested and has passion around native representation in film. But as someone who works in the industry, what does that look like? Like, what are those conversations like with casting directors? What is it like when you pitch a show and you're asking somebody to finance your endeavor? What are those conversations like? I think that would be fascinating for me to know, and I bet people who listen to the show would be interested too, of like, what does that look like? Like, we're talking about enhancing representation and what it's supposed to look like in the future, but how do you get there? Well, you get there by understanding what those conversations are like in the first place, to talk about, what are those conversations like in the closed door meetings and at the real like industry level. So that's kind of the hope. And then also to ask native actors, what's your favorite native movie? What native actors inspired you? Not even native actors, like just actors in general. What minorities inspired you in film? Because, I know for me, I didn't have enough minority representation in film. I loved Selena because it was brown people on screen. I loved Boys in the Hood because it was minorities on screen. Like, looking back on it now, that's why I love these movies. Good Will Hunting, I loved it because it was a leaving the res story, but it was poor white people, you know? So I would love to hear that from native actors and native directors. And then 1 episode a week. That's going to be a lot. I think it's easy right now because I'm enthusiastic, and it's kind of like when you start out workout program and you're real enthusiastic the first week, the first month, and then when it sets in that like, oh, I'm like in this. So my goal is to still keep a 1 episode a week kind of schedule, and I think that's going to change maybe. I'm trying not to, but we'll see where that goes with TV shows as I figure out how I want to do those. But at 1 episode a week. And then the last one, which is like really a goal just for me, but I'm letting you all know just like transparency. This is like the competitive part of me. Like, so how Apple iTunes works, how podcasts work on Apple is if for the casual browser, obviously you can go to the search bar and just type in film reviews or whatever. But for people that are just browsing, like I want to catch people that are just genuinely curious about film reviews, and they look at film review podcasts and they're like, Native Film Talk, what's that about? Like, I want to get people in the same way that native representation just happens in movies like Parasite, like Fargo, like Back to the Future 3. I want to catch people that are just looking for film review podcasts and they stumble across mine. Like, I love the ability to get my profile, get my post shared by somebody prominent on Instagram, and I would get, impressions, get contact, get views or listens by people that wouldn't have otherwise found me through Instagram. But I think Apple Podcasts is because that's how I interact with podcasts. I feel like that attracts a different audience, and I just want a larger conversation. I would love to get more listeners and more people offering their feedback and offering their perspective on native film and native representation in film. So when you look at Apple Podcasts, you go to categories. There's a list of categories there. One of them is TV and film. You click on TV and film. Within that, there's subcategories. One of those subcategories is called film reviews. There's like TV reviews, film reviews. Under film reviews, you click on that. There's a list of like 60 thumbnails that show with the names of the show. And that's based on traffic and reviews. So if you're one of the top 60 podcasts in the United States, or it's really based on like your area. So if I'm in the US, so it'll show me the top 60 in the United States. And if I'm in the top 60, then people can follow it. And I just don't want to like hit it once and then like disappear. Like, I'd love to be in there consistently. So that way when people look and like are just curious, like scrolling through podcasts like Native Film Talk, that's interesting. So that would be cool. And then also like just like I said, the competitive part of me of just like I need a milestone. Like, I'm very goal oriented. I need something to strive for. I need a bar. And then I'll find another bar after that. And I'll find another one. Like that just helps me like stay hungry. And in this one, like my hunger is to just keep the conversation going, to keep pushing out content, but also like this is I don't know what this is going to turn into long term, but I would love to do something like this to like for a career at some point. I don't know if that's being a film critic or creating a YouTube channel. I mean, I have a YouTube channel for this, but I'm just uploading the podcast episodes for, those people that don't know how to use podcasts and don't know what an RSS feed is. But I really think I want to like turn this into something where I'm like getting more interactive and doing video reviews too, and like extracting the audio and making that my podcast episodes. Because I just think there's more opportunity now. You can be so creative with how you want to make a living. And doing this podcast made me realize like it's a shame that if you have the ability to find what you're passionate about and you have that privilege to find something you're passionate about, you should just fucking go for it. Like, chase after it. And that's what this is for me. This is fun. This is a lot of fun. I love doing this. And I don't have any issues ever looking after a movie and trying to like researching a movie, watching the DVD commentary, watching the director interviews, watching red carpet interviews, like listening to people talk about the show and movie. I'm just like, man, this is fun. I love this. This is a good time. I mean, it is a hobby. You could call it a hobby, but I hope to make it more for sure. And yeah, that's kind of like my top 3 goals for the show. So to recap, have a native actor, director, producer on as a guest, 1 episode a week, and then get on the film reviews rotating top 60 on Apple Podcasts. And I think the last one, you all can help with that. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you can. Leave a review on YouTube if you can. If not, it's okay. I'm not going to like force you to. If you just feel compelled to, you feel like you want to leave a review, even if it's just like hitting the 5 stars, 2 stars, whatever you think I am, you know. So, I told you how I choose an episode. I told you how I crafted my episode list. And I also told you where I want to take the show. So let's talk about Thanksgiving. We got that coming up. I think this episode will be released on Thanksgiving. I'm recording this on the 25th. But this is my experience. Just Ian Allison from Tuba City, Arizona, Navajo. My experience. Please don't take this as like all natives and Native Americans in the United States. This is just my experience. I loved Thanksgiving as a kid, and I still love it. I feel like it's very popular right now to talk about the negatives of Thanksgiving and talk about the real history of Thanksgiving, which I'm 100% for. But what I don't like, frankly, is when natives, like other native people, it's not even just native people, but when people try to make me feel like I shouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving, because that's assuming why I have Thanksgiving. And frankly, like in the United States, we have a Thursday and a Friday off. Like most people have a Thursday and Friday off across the country. Schools have a Thursday and Friday off. Like what else are we going to do for those days? Like people are going to come together and like, you know, food goes on sale. You know, it's so hard to not do that. But in my experience, it was always positive. In Tuba City, the population, 10,000 people, I'd say like 9,500 of those 10,000 people were Navajo or Hopi, or some mix of minority, some mix of Native American. The 500 was probably like, it was like doctors, their kids, teachers, their kids, and like maybe spouses of the natives, of the, like native people in the community. But the overwhelming majority of this community was Navajo, Native American of some kind. And it was crazy. Like, I look at that now and I'm like, I kind of was in a bubble. I was shielded. So I never had a negative experience. I never was told, like, do you know the real history of Thanksgiving? Like, I was just like, I guess you could call it being blissfully ignorant. But I also grew up in a time where there was no internet available. There was no smartphones available. I spent most of my time outside. You know, when I tell people about my childhood, it sounds like I was a kid from the 80s or the 70s, because in general, the res is that far behind. No joke. I had dial-up internet in 2002 when I was a freshman in high school. I finally got DSL when I was a senior in high school in 2006. So before 2002, I never had the internet. I never accessed the internet. I didn't know what the internet was. When I finally got DSL, like I was just like, holy crap, this is awesome. I can look up like Shockwave, what was it called? It was like Shockwave player, Shockwave, and I would like play mini golf on the thing. I would play, yeah, like that's what I did. I didn't do anything productive with it. I finally got the internet, and I was like, was never like, what's the real story behind Thanksgiving? Like I never did that. So we kind of were in a vacuum where we didn't have the right knowledge. So like whatever thoughts we had, like that was kind of it. You know, none of my family worked off the reservation either. So it's not like we got this new infusion of ideas all the time. Like everyone in my family all worked on the res. I didn't know Thanksgiving was a problem until I was a freshman in college. When I was a freshman in college, when I went to school, and I heard other natives talk about Thanksgiving, the real history of Thanksgiving, like the problem with, you know, what really happened with the Wampanoag and all the disease and betrayal and death. And I'm like, wow, shit. Well, I still like Thanksgiving. Are we still gonna have stuffing? Does that mean we can't have stuffing and pumpkin pie and turkey and ham? And it's kind of where I went with it. I'm just like, but we still do that. We still like Thanksgiving. I think where I would like things to go, honestly, because I think intent matters, just like in film. And when it comes to representation in film, when it comes to celebrating Thanksgiving or observing Thanksgiving, whatever you do, it's about intent. My intent moving forward, and really I think for the rest of time, is my way of sticking the middle finger to colonizers, to people who wished Native Americans were not on this planet so they could move westward, so they could occupy the United States. My middle finger to them, my fuck you, is imagine from this is like my romanticized idea, so I apologize, but come with me on this mental journey. My vision is that I can imagine my ancestors looking down from us or wherever they are, and they're like, you know what? You're telling me that my Ian Allison, my people that are now offspring of where I came from, specifically, so I'm talking about my Navajo ancestors. You're telling me for one day out of every single year that my entire family all come together and gather, and they all sit around the table and they talk about, hey, when was the last time I saw you? They gather and they exchange words, they exchange food, and there's no food scarcity. They give food away. They invite people over that they never would otherwise because they have extra food and they want people to be fed that day. You're telling me that's a bad thing? Like, I'm looking at it as more of like a resistance in a way of just like, we're still here, motherfucker. Like, we're still here. You know what I mean? That's how I want to look at it, and that's how I observe it now. Of just like, my ancestors would be proud that we're here. Yeah, we're probably can observe it in better ways, like maybe using more indigenous foods. But I view it in the same way that natives have, specifically like Navajos, we've like reinvented fry bread. I mean, every tribe has reinvented fry bread. But the history of fry bread, when you look at it, it's not a good history. But you look at fry bread now, it's a staple in Native American cuisine. Like, fry bread equals Native Americans. That's just kind of where it is now. And like when fry bread came about, fry bread's not a traditional food. We didn't fry shit. We didn't do that. But what did happen was we were put on these barren reservation lands, and we were told, you gotta be farmers now. Sorry, you can't be communal people anymore, so we're gonna put you and separate you. You're gonna have your little acreage, plots of lands that you're gonna live on. And we couldn't grow anything. We couldn't go back and grow what we used to grow. The corn, the squash, the beans. We couldn't grow that because we were put on these barren freaking reservation lands because nobody wanted to live there, because that's the castaway land. That's the land that was like undesirable. So we had to be reliant on the government to get really like government commodity foods. And so what's in that food that the government provided? Processed fucking food. White flour, sugar, lard, canned food. And so over time we figured out like, hey, you can use lard and flour and water and some sugar and baking powder, baking soda, and you can make fried dough. You can make fried bread. And now it's a form of like resistance in a way that we've taken this thing that was supposed to have killed us, and it still does kill us, frankly, because it is so unhealthy, and that's why we have higher rates of, diabetes and high blood pressure. But we now look at it as like a staple of our identity. It's a part of us. At all of my Thanksgivings, there was fry bread. At natives, you go to any other native's house, while they may or may not celebrate Thanksgiving in the same way, I'm positive that the majority of these people will have fry bread in their house. And that's something I am positive of. Even if they're like, we don't cook turkey in this house. We only use indigenous food. I only want things that come straight from the ground. Where's my fry bread? So I think that that's how I want us to reinvent Thanksgiving in that way, where it's like we make it into our own thing. Yeah, it didn't start out in the best of way. yeah, well, it doesn't have the best origin story, but we can make it our own thing. And I try to make it my own thing. And I plan to educate my son when it comes to that, in that same way. Because, yeah, there was a whitewashed version of history, and there is an attempt to have like a revisionist history right now. And I don't know if people are really open to that, unfortunately. You know, just based on the way I can kind of see things, people aren't really open to that dialogue right now. But what I know for sure I can do is talk about it on this podcast when I'm given the opportunity and say, like, that's my vision moving forward, is to be able to look at Thanksgiving as my form of resistance, my form to like look and try to talk to my ancestors, talk to my grandparents, and just say like, hey, thank you. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for suffering. Thank you for fighting through that suffering. Thank you for everything you fought for in your life so that I could still be here. There's like a quote out there of like, I am my grandparents' wildest dreams, my ancestors' wildest dreams. I love that. I would love to think that I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. I would love for them to like look at our lives now and just can't even fathom, like, how can you be living amongst just regular society, functioning the way you do, thriving, not just living, but thriving, and doing something like creating a podcast that talks about Native representation in film. Are you fucking kidding me? That's amazing. Like, that's maybe it's like too positive of a way to look at things, but that's how I view it. And that's what I'm thankful for when I think about Thanksgiving. And I respect those people that have had negative experiences. Like, I respect those negative experiences with Thanksgiving, because there are ignorant people out there. There are schools that still to this day in 2020 have Pilgrims and Indians plays, and they'll have no native in the town, in anywhere in sight. And they'll talk about, you know, Pilgrims and Indians, how it was a peaceful gathering for the first meal, and make headbands and put feathers on them and send the kids home and tell them war paint's okay. Like, yeah, we're just playing Indian, not a big deal. That still happens. I understand that. And there are people that are affected by that bullshit. But I think if you are on that other side, I implore you also to, man, Thanksgiving's your time to freaking be, like, cognizant of your ancestors and just be thankful that you're here. And I'm not telling you that as an imperative, like, you know, whatever you have to go through on this day, you know, I'm with you. My heart goes out to you. But for me, in my experience, because of where I grew up and because of how positive my experience was with Thanksgiving, and because I frankly didn't know what it was until I was like in college, what it truly was, I never had any bad interactions growing up in school. And I'm fortunate in that. For the first time, it's a privilege to be from the res in that sense, because we were in a knowledge vacuum. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with it. I'm about it. Thanksgiving's great. I think too, it's an opportunity to share food. Like, natives in general, we're really big on sharing food. I think sharing a meal with somebody is one of the most like intimate things you can do, cooking for somebody. And in my house, so growing up, it was me, my maternal grandparents, my two brothers, my uncle, and my mom and dad. We like lived in the same trailer for probably the first like 13 years of my life, and then we eventually got our own, which was right next door, so we didn't really go that far once we had our own house. But so we had a lot of us in one house. But on Thanksgiving Day itself, because my grandma was there and my mom has 4 siblings, all of her siblings, it would bring their kids. And so Thanksgiving was always, I get to see my cousins. I can't wait to see my cousins. And it was always like a weekend thing, because everyone would sleep over. We'd all sleep in the living room. It'd be sleeping bags everywhere. And it'd be winter, so it'd be cold. So we'd be sleeping next to the wood stove. And it was always fun. It was always like, no joke, there'd be like 20, 30, sometimes 40 people, 20 to 30 people every Thanksgiving growing up that would cycle through. Either they were from the community, from Tuba City, from nearby, like Red Lake or Page. Like, we'd have family that would just pop in. And my grandma was just cooking all freaking day. Just all you... That fry bread was slapping back and forth all day long. You know, start off the day with tortillas, end the day, midday fry bread, all through the night. Like, it was just a good time. And my grandma was always just like, hey, take more food, take more food. Just take it, just take it. Constantly feeding people. And I saw that. And my mom and my grandma, they would kind of have this like, okay, game faces, everybody. We got to be ready for tomorrow. We're getting up at 3 in the morning. We're putting the turkey in. And they would like prep and get ready. But it was like, they had this joy on their face. When I was like the runner, Ian, so-and-so's here. Go get a soda. Go get a pop for them. You know, or go run to Bashas'. Go get some more soda. Go get some more this. Go get some more stuffing. And it was stressful. It was a lot. But I never heard them complain. I mean, they'll never complain to me. But even as an adult, I never heard them complain. Like, it was just like, we got to feed everybody today. Today was a good day. And that's what it was for my family. Is like, and people would come. They weren't all cheap. They didn't just come by themselves. Like, they would come and bring a pie. They would come and bring ham or extra meat and help, like, you know, further the meal for the day. And that was always fun too, to get people to see their identity in their cooking, that like bring their own personality to the party in the form of food. I thought that was always fun. And so, you know, I have one white uncle in my entire family, and he introduced me to two of the things I love in this world now: green bean casserole and tortellinis. He babysat me one time when I was like 10 maybe, and I never had it. I never even knew it. Never heard the word tortellini, and he made tortellinis, and it rocked my world. I was just like, oh my god. And to this day, I get tortellinis all the time. Anyway, and then green bean casserole. Nobody ever made green bean casserole in my family. You know, it's so funny that the one white person in our family makes green bean casserole, but he threw down. That green bean casserole was something else. Those onion chips were bomb. It was awesome. I couldn't wait. As soon as I saw him and my aunt pull up, I'm like, oh, he's bringing uncle's here. He's got the green bean casserole. And that was like, it was fun. It was fun, you know? So I have positive memories of Thanksgiving. But I will say, that's just me. That's just Ian Allison from Tuba City, my hometown. Because that's not everybody's experience. You know, there's over 560 native nations in the United States, and they all have populations of their own. They all are near different towns. They're all in different parts of the United States, so they're naturally going to be different. So don't assume my experience just because it's positive is like everybody else's. Respect that people might have never had a good interaction with Thanksgiving, and that's unfortunate. And my heart goes out to them, like I said earlier. But what I think we can do is just educate ourselves as best as we can about the real history of Thanksgiving, and try to make sure that our kids are a little more educated. And frankly, I'm not even talking about like canceling Thanksgiving. I'm just saying, like, I'm a glass half full person. I'm an optimist. I feel like if you give people information and trust them to make a good decision, I feel like posterity will correct it however it needs to be. But it starts by educating individuals on what the true history of Thanksgiving is, the true history of the Native American experience in this country, past and present, and where it's going to go in the future. And I think that education alone, by providing people with that, non-Native people and Native people, they're adults, or they're going to be adults at some point. They're going to make good decisions moving forward. Trust them with the information, but first give them the information. So that was it. So really the message is love, not hate. I think that I need to add this part in because I am from the Navajo Res. COVID-19 has really hit my reservation hard. My mother works and helps like kind of in the medical field on the emergency medicine side. She's like a business manager for on that end. That's kind of as vague as I'll keep it. So she kind of sees what's really happening on the day-to-day, and it's bad. Like, we don't have enough beds. Like, the number of beds in the hospital, like in my small town, Tuba City, we only have like 6 ICU beds for a population of 10,000. And then the border towns that are there, like, really it probably serves maybe 40,000 people, and it's just not enough. And we really do have a third of the entire res that doesn't have running water. and plumbed water anyway. And that's for a litany of reasons, for a litany of government, kind of government things that have been instituted where development just isn't as available. And also development has been halted and stalled and not possible in some areas, but people still live there because that's where they've always lived. So it's very difficult. I think it hurts me to not be able to go back home through COVID, especially with my 1.5-year-old. Like, he just, it sucks to have to see his grandparents, watch him grow through a screen. But it's better than the alternative of my family not being here. Unfortunately, I did lose one family member. I think I've mentioned that before in the podcast. My Nully, so that's my dad's dad. He went and passed away. He was in a nursing home, and we had just put him in the nursing home like 3 months before COVID happened. And gosh, it was his nursing home had an outbreak like right when this started in April, and we lost him, unfortunately. And he has been my only close family member, but we have lost family and friends. And it bothers me so much to hear people when they say, like, it's not real, it's a hoax. They try to politicize it. And because, like, their world hasn't been affected, they don't know anybody that has gotten really sick. Or they know people that have gotten sick, and it's just like, it's no bigger than the cold. It's no more serious than the common cold. The flu, I was sicker than the flu, when I got the flu than I was when I got COVID. Just like, okay, good for you. I'm happy that you have a positive experience with COVID, but just like Thanksgiving, I have to recognize that just because I've had a positive experience, I have to acknowledge when people tell me they have a negative experience, I have to believe them. I'm not going to just call somebody a liar because it's different than my reality. And I think with COVID, that's the thing that pains me the most, is when I see people just like, oh, can we just be over this already? Can we just go back to normal? And I'm just like, I really wish that you could see a little bit of the other side of where it is bad, where it is like people are dying every day. In America, I think we've lost around 250,000 people now, like deaths. And there are countless numbers in ICUs right now fighting for their lives. And if it wasn't for our, the quality of our healthcare system, I don't know if people would have, that number would probably be much higher. So I think it's, in doing this podcast too, it's helped me kind of just delve into my free time, because this is like my free time. Like, this takes up my free time doing this. Helps me like stay focused on something other than like looking at the news all day. Because if you live in the United States, I can only speak for Arizona, really. Like, COVID-19 is on the freaking news every single day, and it's like you can't escape it. It's constantly on there talking about the number of new cases, the number of people hospitalized, number of deaths. And it's so hard to not get wrapped up in that. So this podcast has been helpful in that sense. For my wife, for me also, just like gives us something else to talk about. Like, hey, let's go watch that movie. Let's go do this. Because as much as we try to escape it, it is affecting our family. It's affecting our res. So it's hard. My wife's Navajo too. She's from the res, and it's just difficult. And what I do for a living, I'm not going to really talk about it. I have a LinkedIn page. If you're curious, you can look it up. And I say that because people have looked me up. You can see in LinkedIn who looks you up. At least they'll like leave it anonymous. But I'm getting people from like Russia and Cambodia and Toronto, Montreal. I'm just like, and they're like industries I'm not even in. And occupations that I am not even associated in any way, or colleges I'm not even associated anyway. So I know people are looking. And so, hi, those of you that looked me up on LinkedIn. Excuse me. And then, so last reflection before I go. Well, there's really a couple. But where I want the future of native film to go is I just want us to exist on screen. I don't want it to be like, hey, there's an Indian, and here's the plot. Like, I feel like there's a sign stamped on our forehead, like, this, enter the Native American stage left. And it's like, it's so painfully obvious, like, they need it to be announced. And it bleeds into the casting, where it's like, if you find out you're Native, you're typecast. You're like, well, you can only be Native, or you can be an an ethnically ambiguous character, but that's kind of it. Like, Graham Greene, Wes Studi, they've transcended just being Native on screen. Like, Graham Greene was in Molly's Game. He was a judge at the end of the movie. They never said, like, oh, Thank you, Mr. What's a good last name that they use in movies? Oh, from freaking Fargo. Thank you, Judge Proudfoot. Thank you, Thunder. Thank you, Mr. Thunder Lightning. You know, like whatever stereotypical last name they would use. He was just on screen. He was just a judge. That's it. And that's how we are in real life. People are surprised when they find out I'm Native American. But in movies, it's like, hey, there's an Indian. Hey, Chief. Like, it's they make it seem like people recognize us in the real world. And that's not, like, we just blend in. I get mistaken for Mexican, Filipino, more than Navajo. I can't tell you how many Mexican people here come up to me and speak Spanish thinking I'm a Spanish speaker. I'm like, sorry, buddy, I can't. Navajo, Native American, sorry. So I think in film I want to see that. And I want to see the dynamics of being on the res. Like all the stuff I told you, like that's a cool story, I think, of like how you're on the res, you're in a vacuum, you're in a little bit of a separate from the world. And I was on a podcast recently called Nomad Cast. And in there, we talked about the issues of blood quantum and how there's like a ton of discrimination on the res. Like, and I mentioned this in the blood quantum episode, how that'd be a great TV show to explore that dynamic. And I think that's what I want to see moving forward, is having the film industry trust us to tell our stories, but also to just get out of the way and let us tell our stories. At the major motion picture level, I don't think that's going to happen. But at the Sundance level, at the short film level, I think we're definitely getting there. I think there's a lot of good stories that will eventually be told. So I think it's great. I think just more people need to see him. That's all it is. That's all it is at this point. I think more people need to see him, get excited about it, and go from there. So, in my free time, the other non-native movie show that I've been watching, I love Schitt's Creek. Created by Eugene and Dan Levy. I love those movies. Or I love those guys. What am I saying? And I love the movies that Eugene Levy has been in, like Bringing Down the House, and you know he was the dad in American Pie. So I love just that show. It's so much fun, you know. Catherine O'Hara as Moira Rose is just a force. I love her. Like, just her character is just so unique. I've never seen anybody like her, you know. Delia Dietz is all I knew her as before that, and now she's forever Moira Rose. I bring this up for a good reason. The after episode show, I won't spoil the show for you, but after the show's over, it's on Netflix now, by the way. There's a after episode, like 45-minute show, kind of just really recapping the inception of the show, reliving the final, reliving the shooting of the final season. And they kind of talk to Dan Levy about his motivations when writing the show with his dad. And there's LGBTQ people in this movie, in the show. I keep saying movie, in the show. And he said that he wasn't sure how to address homophobia, or if homophobia should be addressed. And so what did he do? He created a reality in Schitt's Creek where homophobia doesn't exist. So when you watch Schitt's Creek, nobody ever has like a reaction when they see a gay person, or when they might think somebody's gay. Like, they don't have that. Like, they're just there. Like, an LGBTQ person is just existing in a reality. I mean, it sucks you gotta freaking make a movie to have that happen, but I think that was a great thing. And this show, I keep saying movie, this show is so positively received. Like, Moira is just a force, you know, like drag. Like, in drag, she's like so drag. Like, they had like drag shows where like Moira would show up, or people would come dressed in all of her wigs or her outfits. Like, she's just this embodiment of just so much of representation. And when I hear people that were being interviewed that were from the LGBTQ community, and they would talk about Dan Levy, talk about Eugene Levy being like such visionaries, and that like they finally saw themselves on TV, or they felt like it was so refreshing and it was so needed, so groundbreaking. And I saw so much. As a heterosexual male, I didn't identify with their feeling of being represented, but the words and enthusiasm, I saw such a parallel to Native representation, because that's how I feel. That same passion, you remove the words, you just see the passion, and you see the like the starry look in their eye of like, I feel seen for once on TV. Like I look at the show and I'm just like, there I am, finally, and not like, but in a positive light and in a way that's more accurate than I've ever seen before. And Schitt's Creek, there's a solution there. Why I bring this up? There's a solution there somehow. Once again, the comedy. I think the comedy disarms people. I think it brings down people's barriers like Smoke Signals did, and it allows you to tell the story that you want to tell. I think that there's a solution in Schitt's Creek in Smoke Signals. I don't know what that is, but like I said, I got like 2.5 years, 3 years worth of content. I'm sure I'll get closer to a point of like where the solution is or what might be a better direction for Native film and Native representation in film. But bottom line is, you're not sensationalizing people on screen because they're not the other, they're people. You need to show them for who they really are, and that's just everyday people facing the same problems. I mean, yeah, they're unique because of their experiences in this country and how they're treated in this country, unfortunately. But with representation, you need to show that. And you know what it took to finally have a show like Schitt's Creek happen? It took somebody from that community to be trusted with the story, to be trusted with the direction for the show. Dan Levy, Eugene Levy, they wrote it together, father and son. And when Dan Levy was writing the show, he wanted to tell this story with this experience. And hell yeah, good on you guys. Hell yeah, go watch Schitt's Creek. Not Native related, not Native film representation, but such a good fucking show. So, this went a lot longer than I thought it did, but I'm wrapping this up right now. So, once again, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you can. I'd appreciate it. Upcoming movies I'm going to do Fargo, just because I got the DVD from my brother. I want to watch the DVD commentary. I want to talk specifically about Shep Proudfoot in that movie. And a ton of people saw that movie. It was an Oscar-winning film. It was an Academy Award-winning film. Fargo Season 2 that has Hanzi in it. Oh, Hanzi. And Thunderheart with Val Kilmer, John Trudell, Graham Greene. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Indian Horse. So that is coming next week. And then Hostels, Christian Bale, Wes Studi. So real quick about Indian Horse. I'm going to have to take my glasses off for this one. That is I will talk about it next week. But god damn it, that is a movie that just... It's almost like... The best way I can describe it is it's like Schindler's List, or it's like A Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Like, it's a story that is so hard to watch, but it's a story that needs to be told. And as a person who's from the community that... Well, I mean, from the overall community. I mean, I'm not an Ojibwe, not from that region where the movie is, but that fictional tale is based on true stories that every Native nation was a part of, the residential schools, the boarding schools. So when you watch that, you see your grandparents. And this isn't like my ancestors went through this. Like, this isn't like The Long Walk where it's 150 years ago, 180 years ago. This is like, if your grandparents are still alive, they went through this. I have, up until recently because of COVID, I had all 4 of my grandparents alive. Like, they went through this shit. So when I see that, I'm just like, ugh. It took me 3 times to just finally watch the movie. 3 times. I couldn't get past the beginning of the movie. I mean, I'm not spoiling anything, but there's scenes in the movie that I just couldn't watch. I just couldn't do it. I eventually had to like numb myself. I had a few drinks the 3rd time, and I just like powered through it. Thankfully, that's not the whole movie. It's not all boarding school. It's not all residential school. But man, that part just so much. So next week it's gonna be a lot for me. But I'm excited to review it because it is a movie. It's a story that needed to be told. And then I'll probably do a palate cleanser after that. Like I'll do something a little lighthearted, maybe like Thunderheart or something. And so today I'm releasing the episode on Thanksgiving. So I will, I'll just say celebrate it however you want. When I ask people at work, I'm just like, so how are you celebrating? What are you doing for the time off? That's all I tell people. Ask them. I don't really assume things, because my grandpa, he always started off the meal with praying in Navajo, and he never said, I'm thankful for this. He was never thankful for things in his life or people in his life. He was thankful for letting me be here another day on this earth with all these people around me. It was like a thank you for granting me this. To his people of the past, to our creator, to just everything. And I love that. And he would just talk about and here's why I'm thankful for you granting this day to me. Because I love my life. Because I'm so happy. I'm happy this food can be shared with the people I love. Let's eat. Let's watch some football. I love that. So regardless of what you're doing, enjoy being alive. Because with everything that our people have gone through, for the native people listening, it's a lot. And with COVID going on, I think everybody can be thankful that, I think if you're listening to this, that you're alive. We have a lot to be thankful for. That's what our ancestors fought for. And someday, someone's going to look back and say, hey, my ancestors, they're talking about all of us listening, and we fought to keep them alive. So that's what they would want. It's always a good day to be Indigenous. Have a good one.